Okay, Nisha, take it away.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nisha Tumber. I am the Director of Engagement and Outreach over at Person-Centered Care Services. I'm very excited to be here on this panel today and moderating this discussion with such wonderful leaders across Staten Island. Let me backtrack a little bit. I am a South Asian woman. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I have my hair in a ponytail today, which is very unlike me. And I'm wearing a black fluffy sweater, and my background is the Golden Gate Bridge. And no, I have not been there yet, but I hope to be there soon. And I'm going to pass it off to Robert King. If you don't mind just introducing yourself to our panelists, to our participants.
Sure. Good afternoon. Good evening. My name is Robert Kee. I am the coordinator of student leadership development here at the College of Staten Island. I use pronouns he, him, his, and it's a pleasure and a privilege to be amongst our esteemed leaders tonight and all of you all here on the call with us. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Robert. And I'm going to pass it over to Yesenia.
Hi, everyone. My name is Yesenia Mata. I am the Executive Director of La Colmena, an immigrant rights organization that focuses primarily on supporting immigrant workers. My pronouns are she, her, ella, and I am really excited to be on this panel because I've been seeing this particular panel on social media, and I was like, what is all this noise? I want to be part of this. I'm very excited to be part of this panel.
Thank you. And finally, Daniel, if you don't mind, just introducing yourself really briefly.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dan Singleton. I'm the principal of PS 31 in New Brighton. I have been principal there for 5 years. I actually am a principal in the neighborhood that I grew up in my early years. So it's kind of like coming full circle. I, under my name, should say CSI alum. I got my master's degree there as well. I graduated from Southern Connecticut State with my bachelor's, and then my master's was done at CSI. So I'm one of you. And I noticed that everyone's introducing themselves with pronouns. So I'm going to follow suit and hope I do this right. He, him, his would be me. I'm very excited to be part of this panel, and I'm honored to be asked to speak and be part of it as well. So thank you.
Of course, thank you for joining us. And as a fellow CSI alum, I graduated from CSI last year in 2021 with my master's of social work. And similar to both Linda and I know Chris is on the call, and Yvette, we're all deeply invested in the PCCLF project. And I'm so glad that this project brought us all here together today. I really want to spark off the conversation with a very basic question, but very deep question, I think. What is leadership, and what does it mean to you guys? And anyone can kind of take that, whatever you guys are comfortable with.
Well, I'll start. I'll start because honestly, leadership has changed. The definition of what leadership is has changed for me over time. It's changed and evolved in what it means to me. Initially, I've been an athlete my whole life, so a leader was someone who led a group of people. And just led them through whatever activity you were doing. But as I start to get deeper into leadership and understand it more, a true leader builds other leaders and builds future leaders. And that's something that I'm really working on and trying to become stronger at. But I really think that's the true definition of a leader, where you can lead other people to understand their power, their strength, and then let them go off in their own directions and lead in whatever they do. So making leaders or building leaders is what a leader does. In my opinion, I'm learning that.
Yeah, no, I mean, from on my end, I always call myself an emerging professional because I'm very new to the field. I just graduated college and all those fun things, and I'm very lucky to be in a leadership position. But traditionally, not necessarily coming into this role, but growing up, to me, when I thought leader, the immediate connotation of that meant, well, control, meant to dictate, meant to do. And I feel like as I grew older and as the work that I'm doing developed and I interact with such wonderful leaders, I recognize that the work was not to do, but um, just leadership in general, that definition changed for me so drastically over the past 2 years, because it was more so what can we do together as a team, not what can we do individually. And I think that is such a thing to unpack, at least for me, because now I recognize that I don't want to succeed. I want us to succeed. And I don't want to succeed in a single project, but I want to see what can my project become out of just one single idea and how can it trickle down the system. So anyone else have any ideas?
I could jump in. So whenever I am organizing or I am getting ready to head to a protest or march, once I end the protest, I end the march, I end the organizing, I always walk away with thinking, how did I make that other person feel? Because I always like to know that when I interacted with someone and when I was either teaching them about what it means to organize, that they felt inspired, that they felt motivated, or that they felt felt powerful to continue the whatever the type of fight you are in. And I say this because when I started organizing when I was 16 years old, and that was 16 years ago, so I'm 32 now, but when I started at 16 years old, I remember that when I would go to trainings and I would always walk out inspired, and it was because of the people that I was surrounded with. They inspired me, they motivated me, they made me feel so powerful. And I think now that I'm at this age, 32, now when I'm mentoring the youth, is the same feeling that I want the youth to feel like when they are getting ready to organize. And I think just going back to what Daniel said, right? I think as you start getting older and you have time in this particular field of organizing, it's who you have worked with and trained for them to continue on the fight, right? Like in Spanish, we always say la lucha sigue, right? And we need to understand that one person cannot change the world, that it does require many of us to work together, and that change doesn't happen rapidly. It takes time. Where we are now, and especially the rights that we have at this moment, it has taken years to be to this point, but however, there's still many fights ahead of us, right? So I think overall, just putting it collectively is like, I believe leadership should inspire, should motivate the next leaders that will carry on the torch.
For sure. And Robert, yes.
Oh, thank you. I think, Dan and Yesenia both just, really nailed it, right? And talked about the importance of building others and building community to kind of help create future leaders, right? And I think for me, I parse it out a little bit differently. I agree with both of them, and I think I have a difference, or see a difference, at least in our program here, of delineating a leader and leadership as two very different things. A leader being a person, and leadership being an action, being a verb, right? And that for me, leadership is a process of how do we build and facilitate and help others enthusiastically or thoughtfully work together to achieve a goal. It's what makes the difference between a group and a team. Like, you have a certain goal, a shared goal that a group of folk want to accomplish together. And a leader is a person that will direct and facilitate folks to be a part of the conversation, to feel a part of that team, to feel included and not excluded, so that we can get our goals accomplished. And I think leadership, anyone can demonstrate leadership. A person can have a title of a leader. I can be the president or I can be the principal. But I'm quite sure, like in Daniel Singleton's school, that there are people that demonstrate leadership that don't have the title of principal or assistant principal or something, right? And that, teachers can demonstrate leadership, or students can demonstrate leadership. It's about, what actions are you taking to make that school an inclusive, holistic learning, safe space for folks to, brave space for folks to, reach their academic goals or change the world, if you will. So I think for us and for me, it's really about how do I create and help facilitate leaders here at school or in the world to change the world. I think it's a huge responsibility that we have for those of us in leadership positions. But I think one of the most important things we do is build that leadership capacity and that confidence and that strength in other people, pull that out of them.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And I love that you brought up that leadership is a leader rather is not necessarily a title. And I worked in my earlier career, I worked a lot with youth, and we spoke heavily about leadership. And again, that's where I began to unpack, what is a leader? And the kids would always tell me, well, they tell you what to do. They dictate, they're the manager, they're this person. I'm like, yeah, yes, but no, right? Because when we talk about leadership, it's about the daily acts. I can easily be a leader in any facet of my life. I can be a leader as a daughter. I can be a leader as a friend. I can be a leader, of course, within my specific job title, but I can be a leader in any aspect of my life. And I think it's so important to especially emphasize that with our youth, for them to recognize that you do in fact have the power. You do not need a title. You do not need any accolades or anything like that to truly be a leader, because being a leader can sometimes be innate. It is something that we do without question, without thought. So that kind of leads me to our next question of, what are the traits of a leader? Or what are the qualities of a leader that what makes a leader a leader?
Can I just jump?
Yeah, of course.
My head when you said that, right? So you told me you don't have to have a title.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to tell a little story about this girl, like in my school, this young girl. She's 10.
Mm-hmm.
But I noticed that she has a lot of influence over the other students. If you pay, as a principal, I walk around, I see different things, right? So I'm watching this girl day after day. She goes to the basketball court. Everyone follows her to the basketball court. It's the weirdest thing. And then she goes to the playground and everybody follows her to the playground. And then she wants to go to the bathroom and everybody wants to go. So one day I stopped her. I said, do you see what's happening? She looks at me, she goes, what? I said, everybody's following you around. She said, I don't know why they do that. I said, because you have tremendous power. You don't even understand and realize that you have tremendous power. For some reason, everyone's following you around. I said, do me a favor, walk over there and come back to me. Everybody's gonna follow you. She stopped and she walked over and everybody followed. It was like a train. And then she came back to me, she said, they are following me. I said, they are. So what does that mean? So we've been having conversations about that, understanding her power of influence. Now, what is she gonna do? Now, what are you gonna model? What are you gonna show us? What are you gonna make us feel like we need to do? Because people are watching you, obviously. So from then on, I mean, she's had her issues, but still, but she understands that her presence is people are watching her for whatever reason. I think it's because she's an athlete. She's an athlete. She can do everything. Like she jumps on the monkey bar, swings off, jumps on, runs up the stairs, and everybody's like, wow. So with that power, what are you gonna do? And you don't need a title. She's a student like everyone else.
Right. And I think that's so beautiful because even younger kids don't recognize the power that they have. And like, of course, it's a popularity thing, right? And we think, oh, well, she's the popular girl, but that can easily be translated into something so much stronger and powerful. And truly, it's about the resources available to youth. And I know that you do such wonderful work in advocating for youth in general. So that is such a nice story to hear. But I did want to ask, back to the traits and qualities of a leader. What are some traits and qualities of a leader that we notice across the board?
I could go next, so we could so we could stay on track. Daniel, then me, then Robert. So I really like how Robert did provide it distinguished, right, what leadership and leader is, and from different areas, like because you could be a leader in different areas, right? And I think for me, the area that I'm just going to be focusing on is more on the organizing side, on being the activist, because that is my background. Eventually I became ED, right? But majority of my background, I've been an activist. I've been an immigrant rights activist. And majority of my fight has always been on ensuring that immigrants get the rights that they deserve in this country, because of my parents, because I saw what my parents went through when I was growing up, and how my parents were constantly undermined because of their accent, because of the color of their skin, because they were undocumented at the time. So eventually, when I tell people that when I got involved, it wasn't because I wanted to, because I wanted to be a leader, right? Or because I was put there. No, when I started organizing, it was because out of necessity. I felt very weak when I couldn't defend my parents. So at a very early age, I was a translator for my mom and dad. I was the one that was always writing documents for them, because at times they didn't really know how to write, right? So I was the one doing that. I was the one going to the doctor with my mom, and to school, and again, being a translator, and putting that pressure on a young person at an early age does make you grow up very quick. So coming from that, and coming from a family that was struggling much, I knew that I needed to stand up and do something. And I wanted, and that eventually, out of necessity, that is when I started getting involved and started getting other youth involved, because my story was similar to other youth. And eventually we were able to figure out that the power at the time, because I lived in a Latino community and I grew up in the South Side of Chicago, I knew the power of the Latino vote. And that's when we started organizing. And we eventually ended up working in a presidential election, the Bernie Sanders campaign. But a leader, it's not someone who it doesn't necessarily have to be someone that says, hey, I'm a leader, and hey, I went to this class, so now I'm a leader, right? No, sometimes leaders emerge. They emerge out of the necessity that they are in. And I think understanding how you came about to being a leader is very important. And I think I always just go back to that. So just going back to your question, Nisha, when you asked me what is a leader, I just remember that for me, it was for somebody that came out of necessity at the time. It's not something that I or others or other youth that I mentor, they want to be leaders. No, they come because they're like, hey, I'm here out of necessity. I'm here because I want to fight back. I want to protect my family. So it just comes in different spaces and in different times in your life, because I also train others who are out of like maybe at the older than youth, right? And it comes in different stages in your life. So you emerge as a leader.
For sure. That was such an eye-opening conversation for me, if I can just share really quickly, because on my end, I never necessarily viewed leadership as well, of course it was a necessity, but the way you say that it as a trait, essentially using necessity as a trait, because I can like lament with you in the same fact that, I came from a family where my parents were new immigrants here, and no one really spoke English. We had my two older sisters, where I can be very honest in saying were my primary caregivers while mom and dad went to work. So I never viewed leadership as something that came about because of that. So thank you for being a leader and for being a role model in this space, and showing a younger professional such as myself in, wow, that is where my leadership comes from. It came from a place of necessity. It came from a place of, well, no one else is doing the work and I'm used to doing it, so I'm going to continue doing it. Wow, that is so awesome. Thank you, Yesenia.
I just want to echo both, Daniel and Yesenia's examples. I love them. I mean, they're really practical, real life, non-theoretical examples of what leadership looks like. Daniel's sitting here, looking and finding genius in his students and helping them recognize what power and skills they have so they can have an awareness for themselves. And then to be able to manage that is critical. And then to have someone who they can process and talk to in him, is a great example of a leader in action demonstrating leadership. Yesenia talking about I recognize that there are things that need to be done, and I have a choice. I can either ignore them or I can step up at the plate and do something about it. And so she chose leadership and out of the necessity, but she could have chosen not to. She could have ignored it, but that's not the type of person she is. And there's leadership in action right there. There's integrity. There's a demonstration of it. So which leads into your question to me of, what are characteristics of good leaders? Here you see two perfect examples of what characteristics good leaders demonstrate. I also think, in the theoretical, I think integrity, how a leader communicates, and I think more than how he, she, or they talk, but more importantly, how he, she, or they listen. I think listening is such an important skill, so that people feel like they can trust that you hear them, that you are willing to work with them. You can build that relationship with them, because ultimately that's the biggest factor why teams succeed or fail, is that people don't feel like their leaders trust them. And so the team breaks down. Having awareness of yourself, and what your growth edges are, how you deal with conflict, how you deal with vision. Are you confident, or is it about building success in others, or do you want the credit for things in yourself? Recognizing your own power or influence as a leader, what your skills are versus in addition to those other skills on your team, and how can you collectively pull those skills together to reach your goals. I think having the courage and confidence to face challenges that come up. And oftentimes we know that leaders really is a reflection of who you are, that wherever you go, there you are. So if you are conflict averse in your personal life, you're going to be conflict averse as a leader on your team. So being able to do your own work, being self-reflective, and that respect of yourself and respect of others. And that really does mean that introspective growing and building and being in that space that you can honor where folks are on their path, on their growth. And I think having that vulnerability to do that yourself really sets an example for other folks to feel like they can trust you. And so, are you there to listen to understand, or are you listening to be understood? Right. So I think those are some of the strong qualities in addition to what we see in Daniel and Yesenia. Great question.
Yeah, of course. And on my end, the most important trait that I think an individual can hold, especially in a leadership position, but truly in any position, is empathy. I think empathy has truly guided me in all the work that I do personally, and I'm sure I can speak on all of our behalf that empathy is a guiding factor in almost everything we do, because the way I describe empathy is that no, I do not have to be in your place, your space. I don't necessarily have to be in your shoes, but I can understand that no, my experiences and your experiences are completely different, and each of our experiences, regardless of where you are in your life right now, have led you to where you are. So, and a perfect example I always give is even the things I hate about a person, right? I completely hate it. And I explain this to my friends all the time. I'm like, when they gossip, when they talk badly about someone, I'm like, listen, everything you hate about this person, whatever you hate about them, it came from somewhere, right? So we cannot judge someone based on their experiences. All we can do is try to understand it. All we can do is try to recognize that, man, they went through what they went through and I can't do everything to change it, but that's okay, because your experience is your experience, and empathy is the guiding practice that truly gets me just through life in general, and truly is the motivating factor why I do what I do, honestly. So yeah, thank you, guys. And just to follow up, why is it important for youth to feel empowered as emerging leaders? Why why is it important for youth to be involved and to feel empowered in the work that they're doing, or as emerging leaders and as future leaders?
So I wanted to kind of double back to that question, because I was listening to Yesenia, and I have a lot of students where their second language is English, and their first language is Spanish. And I have a lot of students like that. And then their parents come up to the school and they speak. So I see kids like you, like I see them when they're little. And it's so funny. They're so different. Some of them are like really confident when they talk to their parents. And some of them are like, am I supposed to be like, I'm leading right now? Like I'm leading my mom who is in the head of, who's leading me, but I'm leading her today because I need to give this information to her, which is so cool to watch. And it's like leadership, like in its infancy stage. Like it's awesome. Like I love to watch it. And I got to make sure I got to brush up on my Spanish because I don't know what they're saying sometimes. And like, are you telling your mother what I'm saying? But I remember I get that a lot. So that makes me inclusive. And also I just want to say that leadership takes a lot of bravery, and not just physical bravery, just being brave physically, but being brave in terms of decision making, being brave and understanding what the goal is and moving towards it, even if it's not popular with people all around. Because when you're a leader, everyone doesn't agree with you. So everyone's not going to agree. People are not going to agree with what you have to say, but you have to make decisions based on what have a constituency, like, or involving constituency and decision making. You have to make that decision, although it may not be a popular one. And mine was my thing that I attacked immediately, and then continue to do so, is how I work in a school where a lot of people blame the children for their failures, and I'm in the process of making the adults look at ourselves and think about what we could do better to make sure our students are better equipped to learn and to lead themselves. And sometimes those are very, very difficult conversations to have, because people don't want to look at what they did, especially adults sometimes. Let's just keep it real. Adults don't like to look at what they could do better. Sometimes it's easier to put it on the kid. But my conversation always now is, okay, he threw a book. Why did he throw the book? Not just, let's punish this kid for throwing a book. And sometimes that way of looking at things makes people very uncomfortable. And as a leader, you have to be willing to have people be uncomfortable in their truth. You have to be willing. This is your truth. Let's be uncomfortable, but let's move to make things better. So I would say bravery is a big thing that we need to really look at. When you can't be afraid to step out there. I mean, there's times where I had to, in my school, something's going on and I have to step out and close the door, and I'm outside. I'm scared to death. So I ain't talking about that kind of bravery, because I'm still scared. And I hope that nothing happens, but I understand that this is my show, and I have to stand in the front sometimes, and I have to deal with what comes, and that's leadership as well. I just wanted to add that.
No, of course. Thank you for adding that. I really, really appreciate everyone adding their like personal anecdotes and sharing those stories. I think it's so prevalent, especially for our youth, to kind of listen to like the real life of what it means to be a leader. And I think, Daniel, you're doing such a wonderful job in really highlighting the vulnerability that comes with leadership, and highlighting that shows just, listen, you don't got it. We don't all got it. I know I'll scream it from the window. Like, I don't got it all, but man, I'm trying to figure it out every single day. And I think that's what a great component of a leader is. It's, listen, I'm going to fall today, but best believe 6 a.m. tomorrow morning, I'm getting back up and I'm going to start all over and I'm going to figure it out. And I think the bravery aspect of leadership is about being brave means that you know that sometimes you're going to fail, but being brave also means that you know that you're going to get up after you fail. So definitely thank you. And just to follow up with that question again, why is it important for youth to feel empowered as emerging leaders? And I can definitely spearhead that conversation really quickly, because I've worked with youth in the past, and something that I always say, and I'll share right now. I went to middle school at IS 51, and I think it was my 6th grade teacher. Her name was Miss Bailey. She had put a quote on the board, and I remember this so vividly. The quote was by Thomas Paine, and it was something along the lines of, "Children are blank slates," and that resonated with me so. I mean, clearly so that even, years after that, I'm bringing it up today, but children are blank slates. To me, that meant children are born into this world with absolutely no idea of what is and what can be or what isn't. And it is their experiences. It is everything that have led them to where they are today, that made them who they are today. And it is the environmental, the societal impacts or interactions that have made them who they are. So when we talk about emerging leadership, emerging leaders, specifically amongst youth, it's about recognizing your place in space now and understanding that it came from somewhere, understanding that who you are now came from 10,000 steps before you. And that if you're not happy with who you are now, or if you're not, and I'm talking just even straight up like interpersonal development, that if you are not happy with who you are now, if you are unhappy with the way things look right now, the way anything in life, that you truly do have the power to change it. It is truly just a mindset. And it's not easy. It's not. And at 25, I've learned so much about myself just in these past couple of months of what I can do and what I want to do. And I'm finding a place in space where I'm learning that, wow, I can. I've spent so much time saying I can't, but now I'm realizing that, no, I can, and I very well will. So what, why is it important for our youth to feel empowered as emerging leaders?
I have one more to add. I love all the comments that have been here, and I'll just make it really plain and practical for me. My vantage point is, like it or not, like our generation or my generation, I think I'm a little older, we've created a lot of problems in this world. There are a lot of issues and a lot of challenges, from immigration to poverty to racism to our economics, our globalization, gentrification. We have a whole host of challenges that we need to be solved. And one of my favorite quotes is by Albert Einstein, which says, like, you can't solve our problems with the same thinking used when we created these problems. All right. And our leaders, our youth, are our next generation of leaders. So it is going to be on them to solve some of our problems that we have or that we are living in right now. And there are going to be new problems that need to be created. And obviously, our generation, our leaders, haven't been able to solve them. So it's going to be incumbent upon our youth to solve some of these challenges, and support and take care of this world and take care of this planet. And so they need those skills. They need that confidence. They need to learn how to do the work themselves, not to further exacerbate the existing problems, how to support and love and learn from each other, and how to work collaboratively to, love our planet, to heal our planet. And to me, that's the basic importance. And so there's a huge responsibility for us to bring out the best in the genius in others. Einstein has another quote that I love, and I promise to be my last Einstein quote, that everybody's a genius, right? But if you judge a fish ability to climb a tree, it'll spend its whole life thinking it's stupid, right? And so to recognize the genius in each one of our students, and how they differ, what their skills are. If someone's an introvert, but they're really, really good at building consensus, they're really good at finding out and assessing what a situation is going on, versus the extrovert who, is more, articulate and charismatic. And there's so many different types of leadership, right? Leadership styles. And so it's important, I think, for our youth to understand and recognize what their specific leadership styles are, what are the strengths of them, what are the challenges of that style, and yet how to work with people who are different. And we are moving more and more into a globalized international world environment. You go to school, you're sitting with people who were born in different countries, different class backgrounds, that we have to learn to figure out how to bridge those gaps and use them as strengths. And there's strength in that. And oftentimes the rhetoric and the racism and, all that crap seeks to divide us and not to unite us. And so I think for us, it's really important that we continue to teach and show our youth how talented and gifted and give them the confidence, so that when those opportunities present themselves, like Yesenia was talking about earlier, they have the ability to say, I'm going to do something. I'm going to step into that leadership and make that change in the world. So that's why I think it's incumbent upon us to continue to do this work, and why youth leadership development is so important.
I can go next. So I always like to work with youth, and I always bring in like I always do, bring in my personal story, because I always want them to understand that it doesn't matter where you come from or your surroundings, that you are able to make a change. And as someone that grew up in the South Side of Chicago, I was always told that I was going to become another statistic. So very early on, I said to myself, I won't let a zip code define me, and I won't allow myself to become another statistic. And through the necessity that I had at the time, as I always say, I just always wanted to protect my parents out of that necessity. I started organizing, and I think as Robert was explaining, at the time, I didn't have any sort of training, but I did have a specific skill. And that skill was what you grow up with in the South Side of Chicago. You learn to fight for yourself. You learn to stand up for yourself. You learn to understand who you can trust, you cannot trust. You have that hood instinct. And I say that because I know that many of the young, the youth that grow up in an area that they may feel that they lack the resources, or that they're not fit to be leaders, or that they are whether it might be hood or whatnot. No, you have that resiliency. And thank you, Robert. You have that resiliency. So that is what helped me emerge to be a leader, to be a grassroots organizer. And eventually, as I started getting more skills, I learned that I needed to get additional training. And I say this because a leader never stops learning. Till this day, I am still getting training, and I understand what my skill is. And it's the same skill that I had when I started organizing. I know how to stand up for myself. I know how to fight back. I know when someone's lying to me, whatnot, but it's that same hood instinct that I had at 16 years old. And I say this because I want to tell the youth never to shy away who you are as a person. Always come in as holistically as you are, because the time that in the moment, I want to say that I became the most powerful, and I say it with the most confidence. It was a day that I accepted who I was. That I was a girl from the South Side of Chicago, Latina, Mexicana, my parents are immigrants. And with that, accepting myself, then I was able to move forward. So I think that's the message for the youth. Be proud of who you are. When you walk in the room, walk in holistically as a whole and say, this is who I am, and take the skill of resiliency that you have to be able to move forward. And this is why I always I always like to work with youth, because some of them tell me, hey, I never received training, but I could see it in them. I could see the resiliency that they have, that they want to fight for their community. And I always tell them, no, you got it. You'll see, you got it.
Just quickly to add on to that, I just think that when students get children or just leaders get a chance to lead, especially at a young age, you get used to that, right? And you don't accept everything that everyone gives you. Everyone has their own path, and you develop your path. And I feel like you have to try things and not be successful or fail them. You can't be afraid to fail. I tell my students that all the time. We do the 7 habits of happy children. That's why I recognize that. Seek first to understand and then to be understood. Like that pops out. My kids say that every morning. And also, don't be afraid to fail. Leaderships, some of our greatest leaders have failed, and I use them as examples. And that doesn't mean that they're done. That means that that's just the beginning, and they can improve themselves. And if kids can do that, then they can pick themselves up, dust themselves up, and keep going. But if you wait for someone to lead you all the time, they could, one, lead you to the wrong place, and they could be stagnant. So I always encourage kids to try things, put yourself in positions to invent things and be first. Don't be afraid. And if you do that, if you fail, you say, okay, what did I do? And then you can get back up and keep going. And then it's a habit and you build it. And it's a muscle that keeps working. And that's what happened with me and so many people like me. We followed so much and it wasn't working. It may have not been working. And then just not being afraid to just leap to new things. And that's a big part of leadership as well. Just not being afraid to fall down. Because you get back up and you keep going. And that's important to teach kids. I teach them every day. It's like, oh, how was it? Because we had state testing this week. Oh, Mr. Singleton, oh, I don't know. How did you, my question to you, did you do your best? Yeah, I did, but I got tired. Did you do your best? Yes, I did my best. Then that's all we can ask for today, right? And if it wasn't great and it didn't come out great, then we need to do something different. But don't stay stagnant and don't stop trying. Don't be afraid to fail. Go into it knowing that it might not be perfect, but there's things that you can do. And kids need to hear that every day. Like every day I do this ad nauseum. It's like, all right, I did not tell you. Like I tell you not to. Sometimes I get angry. Like, I had a kid in my office today that came back to me. He's in 8th grade. I teach up to 5th grade. He came to me to talk to me. And I'm like, man, didn't I tell you that was going to happen? Because he got in trouble. Didn't I tell you that was going to happen? Didn't I tell you? He says, yeah. But I said, you have to forge your own path, bro. Like you can't follow people. And it's real difficult sometimes for them to do that because they're waiting for somebody to tell them what to do. Hey, man, you can do it. You know what to do. Try it. Try this. It goes to something as simple as a lunchroom. You should see the kids. They won't even touch the food. I'm like, what's that? It's a dumpling. It's good. Try it. They won't even try it. Like try it, just try it. You'll like it. And then you'll form your own opinions of things. Don't wait for somebody to tell you what it is. And a lot of our kids do that.
For sure. And I think that's such a prominent, aspect of just childhood in general. If you throw yourself into things that maybe, and I shared in the chat, that you're unfamiliar with or that you're uncomfortable with, just try it. And I think I always say it is in the midst of uncomfortability that you learn the most. I think a lot of children, especially youth, think that, well, I need to know how to do this. If I don't know how to do it, then I can't apply for this program. I mean, I have a great example at one of my younger cousins. I sent her, I'm that resource gal. I'm always sending resources to everyone. And there was a spring break STEM program. And I sent it to her. She's like, well, I don't know anything about this. I'm not going to do well. I'm like, girl, it's for you to learn. And she's like, yeah, but I don't know how to do it. And I'm like, you're going to learn. It's okay. I'm like, you're like 14 years old. It is totally okay. And it's for 5 days. It's okay if you don't know how to do it. I promise you, nothing's going to happen. And I'll make sure that when you turn 25, that it'll never trace back to you. Right.
You're 10. I think you're 10 years old. What are you talking about? I never did that before. You're 10.
Yeah, of course you never did it. I'm like, I'm 25. I never did it either, but we're going to try it together. And a little follow-up question is, can you provide any examples of how all three of you individually led through change? And this can be in your current position in the work that you do, or just any past roles that you've had, or honestly, even as a young adult. How did you lead through change? When was there a time that you recognized that perhaps something needed to be changed and you did something about it?
So I share the story a lot because it's very powerful with me. And when I was born on Staten Island, I lived on Jersey Street, New Brighton area. So it's one of the tougher areas in Staten Island, and it was a certain way I felt like I had to be to survive there. Right. So I had to always be ready to throw down if it was time to throw down. I had to always be tough and stick up for myself. And it resulted in fighting a lot, like fight after school, you fight on the way home. And if somebody look at you wrong, you got to slap them, and this is how I grew up. So when I was 13, I moved to New Jersey, where it was totally not like that. My first couple of days there, I think I fought twice, like in the first 2 days of me getting there. And simply because people were trying to get to know me, and I was so closed off to whatever they were offering. And I said, hey, you're too close to me. You're in my space. I'll smack you. And these are the things that I'm thinking about. And then after getting suspended a couple times and not being able to stay on the basketball team because I didn't want to do certain things and I started to see that this stuff was not positive, I had to change the way I thought. And I think that that's the deal with a lot of the students that I deal with now. They just, the environment that they belong to, they don't get outside of it. And it's hard for them to adapt to a new environment. And that was hard for me. So once I started to adapt to it, I wanted to come back to New York really, really badly. And once I adapted to the environment, then I took off, because I understood that this environment had some positive things for me to learn and build off of. But I had to change my mindset first. Can't fight everyone. Let people in, and then, and adapt to your environment. So that was my come to Jesus moment. You can't get suspended 6 times in 2 weeks. Like, it's crazy. Like, you can't keep doing this. So, I changed, and living in New Jersey actually changed the way I thought about. I mean, if I didn't move here, I don't know where I'd be. I'd be probably in a different place.
Robert or Yesenia?
Oh yeah, so we'll continue the trend. I was looking at Robert. I was like, do you want to? Well, I think for me, the moment, like I just shared, right, the moment that I realized that it was a time to create change was very early on. And that's how I started getting involved in the immigrant rights movement. And when I started organizing, I remember I was like, oh, we could create change so quickly right now. And then before you started noticing, 2 years later passed, and I'm like, oh my God, we're still fighting for immigrant rights. We're still here. And I guess throughout time, I started realizing that I'm just speaking specifically about the immigrant rights movement, that there's much work to be done. So much work to be done. And I from my end, I realized that that the fight continue, la lucha sigue, but on a personal level, that I needed to get more equipped with my skills, right? With my organizing, with I could no longer, if you don't get the training that you need or the skills that you need, then you just continue being in the same place, right? So throughout that time, and I really like how Robert was when it comes to theory, right? Because I had to learn that. I had to learn the theory process. I come from the grassroots organizing. So, but that only goes so far. If you cannot explain the work that you're doing, then how are you supposed to explain it to others or train others? And that is when I needed to change. So, and I'm not talking about right now, and I know your question was more about when did you started creating change, and like I said, right, it started very early on, but but for me, the change happened when and personally was when I learned that I needed to get equipped with my skills, and that I needed to understand the theory process, and that there was much learning to do. And through that, I'm still doing that learning. But through that, I started realizing that my fight's still in the immigrant rights, but in another level at this point, right? And that so with that, I guess for the youth that is listening, you will see that you will evolve as a leader throughout time, that your fight may, I used to do a lot of protesting. You would see me outside, and I mean, I still do it because I still like to be on the ground, right? But I am now executive director, and that requires me being on site, me ensuring that the staff is well taken care of, me ensuring that the programming is running well, because now I'm supporting a whole different level, right? So I need, as a leader, you emerge and your fight changes. But that doesn't mean that you need to get out of that you're no longer part of the movement. No, you're still part of the movement, just in another level, and that's okay. So I think I, as a person, needed to realize that, because that took some time. As an activist now coming to executive director, that was very hard. So I guess for the youth that is listening, you evolve as a leader over time, and you get different skills, and that's the beauty of it. You evolve, and that's why being part of a movement, it's beautiful.
Thank you, Yesenia. I think I'll take mine a little bit in a different level, a different path. I think the pandemic to me was a good example for me that required change, demonstrating leadership through change. We were here, I was in this office a couple years ago, and we get a call saying, go home. And I'm teaching workshops, I'm teaching classes, and I am like, what? Huh? Zoom? What is that? I have no idea. And I'm comfortable on machines, but I had no idea what the software was, didn't know how to do it, didn't know how it was going to translate. How am I going to teach my classes? How am I going to do what's the unknown? There was so much unknown. And how long are we going to be? And then I'm going to be stuck in the house, and depressing it is, and blah, 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 blah. So a whole lot of unknowns. And then I also run our food pantry here. And so, when fears rampant about not going outside, rightly so, being scared of, contracting COVID, and not wanting to be out, but then having to come here to, serve our students. I had to figure out, what was going on for me. How was I going to deal with this and still be able to provide service to our students who needed food, deal with my fears thoughtfully, not dismiss what I thought and what I felt. And then in terms of school and classes, for 2 years, each semester, we didn't know what we were doing from semester to semester. Our policies and protocols would change from month to month. And so when I'm in my classes, part of it was just having an honest dialogue authentically with my students. And like, look, this is where I'm at. I'm flipped out. I'm scared. I don't know how to best do this. And so can we do this together? And it was that authenticity and that honesty that really built the trust with my classes. And so, the first class we start, of 25, 30 people, maybe 2 of them had their camera on. As the semester went on, no one had their camera off. Everyone had their camera on because we were in relationship doing it together. We redesigned how the classes would look like. We, accepted people for what was happening in their lives, and they were depressed. We weren't, chastising them. We weren't making fun of them. We were supporting them. And so the past 2 years has been like an emotional roller coaster, truthfully, and mentally fighting my own demons, fighting my fears of the unknown, fighting change. I didn't think I was going to be good at, Zoom. I didn't think I was going to be good in this capacity. What I have to say translate in this modality of being online. I love being in person. I prefer to do and give my classes and speeches and presentations in person and mess with my students in person. And it sometimes I would feel like for me, it didn't translate, in this modality. But then at the end of the year, students are coming up to me, or now they're coming up to me, oh, I was in your class last year and blah, blah, you. And I'm like, really? I had that kind of an impact even in this modality. So you never know the impact that you have on people. But I think part of it was, taking it a day at a time, having people around you that support you, encourage you, are positive, aren't naysayers, are trying to build you and, honor where you are. But just how do you honor your own truth and where you are and show up with that? And I think that was important for me. And once I felt like I could do it, and no matter how I did it, I did the best I can. Principal Singleton starts talking about, did you do your best today? Did you do your best today? I'm like, yes. And that's all I had to say to myself. And so those tapes that I would say to myself, Don Miguel Ruiz has a great book, 4 Agreements, right? Yesenia, I know you know, and I see your big smile over there. Do your best, right? Always do your best. Tomorrow's another day. And if I felt like I did my best today, then I learned something, and tomorrow's another day. If I didn't feel like I was my best today, that I can reflect about what I did, try something again tomorrow. And so the past 2 years has been, was something that I think back and don't wish that on other folks. And I'm also a graduate student too. I've been in school at the same time too, and hate the modality learning online. So, I've had to process my stuff and really deal with it, and not stick my head in the sand. And so it's been work. It's been great to learn about myself and learn about the people around me. And to know that I couldn't have done it alone. I needed my friends, I needed my support, I needed my students, my colleagues, you know, and then with all of our challenges, like here on the island, we need each other. We really need to depend and hold and support each other. We have so much more in common than we do, that it makes us different.
For sure. And I think, Robert, you're bringing together this wonderful piece that really ties in together with what the Staten Island Equity Belonging Project is, what the PCCLF is all about. What can we do together that we cannot do alone? And I think in almost everything that we're addressing, it was recognizing that, listen, I am one person, but I can get multiple people on board. And how can we do that? And I know I'm trying to be mindful of time, and everyone's sharing such awesome answers. And so my final question, and this is my favorite question to ask, to be completely honest, but who inspired you? So a public figure, a family member, someone in the field, and what motivates you? Your family, your community? I feel like Yesenia wants to go. So you can
Yeah, I
go.
see
Oh,
the
no.
bubble. I see the bubble over her head. She's got so much excitement.
No, I see it. No, I was looking at Daniel because I thought we were going in order.
Yeah,
so
in
I'm
order.
looking at- Sorry, so I'll just wait for Daniel. You go, Daniel.
No, I don't know. I'm thinking. I'm just thinking of people that I admire. I think there's a lot of people that I really didn't know what leadership was or what was being done. I just can always go back, and I wish, like, every time someone asks me about who changed my life, I always go back to a teacher when I was a freshman in high school, Miss Daniel. And I can't find her now. Like, I'm trying to get her on Facebook. I can't get her. Can you get her on Facebook? I'll talk to my wife. So like she changed the way I look at, she changed the way I looked at myself. Like, and none of this works if you don't look at yourself and value yourself. None of it works. Like you have to be able to value yourself and look at yourself and recognize what you bring. And she did that for me. You know, as a kid growing up with not much self-esteem, just being from just a house that was very tumultuous and there was things going on, and I didn't feel like I was anyone. She really, really pressed upon me, like, you are someone, and you are very smart, and you're very handsome. And she used to tell me that every single day. And every day I walked into her class, and at first I really was thrown back by it. Then I questioned her authenticity, and then I realized that she was being honest with me, and she was trying to build me up. I didn't realize that until I got older, but it did build me up. And I never wanted anyone to feel like I felt going into the class, and I wanted everyone to feel like I felt when I was in her class. So it just changed the way I looked at everything, looked at myself. It made me try harder academically. It made me try harder in sports. And I realized that one person can do that for people. And I know I'm not the only one she did that for, but I'm 45. I was 15 when I was in her class, and I remember it like it was yesterday. So that made me want to be a person that does that and uplifts kids. Didn't really fully understand what that meant, but as the years go on, I understand more, and I'm very grateful for her. And I need to find her on Facebook, hon. All right, she's trying.
And I think the most beautiful thing about like connecting with people and finding someone that inspires you is that you'll always strive to replicate the feeling that they made you feel for other people. And you'll always find yourself using the same techniques, the same tactics that they used on you, because I can totally agree with that. Yeah.
Every day on my birthday, she made me a cake. Every year, she made me a cake, like a funfetti cake.
I love that.
My wife will tell you, she makes it for me now, right? She makes it for me because of Miss Daniels. Like, that's the kind of effect she had on my life. And
I hope you can find her on Facebook just to connect with her.
What's her name? Let's all look for her. What's her name?
Her name is Myra Daniel. I've been looking for her forever.
MYRA Daniel, DANIEL.
That's it.
And in New York or Staten Island?
Jersey.
Jersey. Do we know what part of Jersey?
Old Bridge.
Old Bridge. All right, folks, there's a challenge. Here we go. Leadership in action. We're looking for Myra Daniel.
$10 reward for whoever can find her.
One funfetti cake in
And
your
a
name.
funfetti cake.
She'll make it.
Yesenia, you want to go?
Sure. Someone that inspired me was my father. I always talk about him all the time. And he's actually, like I always tell people, he's the one that inspired me, and it was because of the time that at a young age, around 5, he took me to work, and he was at the time picking up cans so he can, so he can then recycle them and then get money. And during that time, I was 5 years old, so I was like, yeah, papi, I want to go with you, I want to go find toys with you. And what happened eventually was that, well, as he was doing that, picking up cans and whatnot, certain people passed and they were just laughing at my dad. And that really pissed me off. I was 5 years old, and what does a 5-year-old know about being pissed off and embarrassed, right? But I remember that feeling, and I said I didn't like that feeling. I never wanted to feel like that. But I do remember what my dad told me, and he said, Mija, you should always be proud of who you are. And I think with that always gets to me. That always reminds me of, and that's why earlier I said that I always try to walk in fully confident and understand that accept myself as a whole. So I think with that, I always think about my father. But even till this day, before I even start work, he calls me and says, he's like, hey, you're going to get things done today, right? And I'm like, yeah, sure am, right? So it's just that I think my father is the one that always motivates me and inspires me, which were the two things that you asked me, what is attributes that a leader has, right? And I said motivation, inspiring. So that's what my dad does every morning.
Thank you, Yesenia. I got goosebumps listening to your story. It's a very simple question, and I didn't even know for years what a leader was. I didn't call it a leader. I just called it grandma, or I called it ma. My grandmother is right now, she's a 97-year-old indigenous Cherokee woman raised in rural segregated North Carolina, with a first grade formal education down south, and she had 6 kids. And she is the epitome of strong, stubborn, wise, funny, resilient, hilarious, human, beautiful. And my mom, who is the same, except 25 years younger. And my mom had me at 15. Who grew up in Staten Island, born in the projects, and I sometimes scratch my head when we go down to our family lives on a reservation in North Carolina. When we go down to the reservation and I look at my cousins and my family there, and I look at my life and my privilege and where I've come, that old adage of wherever you go, there you are. And I count my blessings and look at how my grandmother made a decision to move and migrate off the reservation into a Black housing project here on Stapleton in New York in the 50s, and the Black migration north, and learning about who I was, and hearing grandma's stories about these white landowners who would harass her and grope her going to school as an 11-year-old or 12-year-old, 13-year-old. And I remember this story. That one day she's like, she's so feisty. I'm not going to let this man touch me. So she went one day and she took a baseball bat to school with her, and she hid it in her jacket. And this man walked up, or one of the neighbors down the street walked up to, or down the road, walked up to and tried to grope my grandmother. And she hit this man, with a baseball bat and knocked him out, got on the ground, and she's still beating him up. And she went to school and she's crying at school. And she told the teacher what happened. And the teacher's like, well, why are you upset? And she said, because my mom is going to whip my for whipping this man with a baseball bat. All right. And she, not that she stuck up for herself and that she was that fierce and strong to stick up for herself. But she was worried about the consequence that, what with her parents say for beating up a white man, that she's now knew that these dynamics of race and ethnicity, how they played out down the rural South. So I think my passion for race and social justice definitely comes from her, of acknowledging and owning and appreciating from whence I come and why it's important, and opportunities and privileges that I've been afforded and need to continue to share with our students and my community, and to allow other folks that same access to privileges that I enjoy and that we can all enjoy, right? And my mom, the same strength, the same resilience. I have no idea how she raised a child at 15 years old. No idea how she did it. And, I see strengths. So when I think about quitting or thinking, I think of my grandmother hearing her words or her stories, or my mom telling me, you can't quit. You're the one who's going to make it out of all of us. You need to set the example for future generations and blah, blah, blah. And so I really make that connection and love, both Daniel and Yesenia talked about like our identity and how that informs the work that we do. And so they both, I love them dearly, but to me, there is no stronger woman / leader than my mother and my grandmother. They're amazing women.
And I can definitely, whenever I think, who is my biggest inspiration, first thought for me is always mom, right? Like, she just came home from work. My mom works at Kohl's every day. I'm like, Mommy, you don't have to work. You don't have to work. Like, 3 of your 4 kids, they all have jobs. Like, take a break. Similar to my dad. My dad is in his 60s, will not let go of that taxi, man. Every day he's like, I have to work at least 2 hours. And I'm like, Papa, fine, do it, right? But I'm like, you don't have to. He's like, I want to. So that hard work mentality just came from home. I mean, specifically with my mom. And it's very interesting. My mom is always the hardest worker I know. But the second I tell my mom, like, Mom, I'm so tired, it's never get up and keep working. It's always take a break. You don't have to work that hard, Nisha. The other day, I just sat in her lap, just like a baby. I was like, Mommy, I'm tired. And she's like, why are you tired? And I'm like, because I'm working. What do you mean, why am I tired? She was like, well, why are you working so hard? And I was like, because I want to be rich. What do you mean? Right? I was like, what kind of question is that? And she hit me with one of the most eye-opening things I've ever, honestly, and I haven't had many of those recently. And when I said, Mom, I want to be rich, she said, well, you're still going to eat 1 roti every day, right? So for those of you that don't know, roti is similar to rice, or it's just a staple in Indian food. And it's eaten every day, especially in my household. And she hit me with well, you're still going to eat 1 roti every day, right? Even if you make $65 million? And I'm like, yeah. And I just didn't have a response. And to me, that was just like, and for someone who is such a hard worker, such as my mom, I mean, I can openly share, my mom fought very, very hard for all of her daughters to get an education, especially in a culture where education isn't valued, especially amongst girls. And we pay it forward. All my nieces and nephews in India, my mom is such an advocate for them to get an education, because she recognizes that she didn't have a voice when she was her age, but she very well will make sure that anyone that passes her way, that whatever obstacles and barriers there are, if she can help them, she most definitely will. I mean, so for me, my mom, and I'm very lucky to be surrounded by such powerful women in my life. I mean, I am lucky to work under such wonderful women as well, that really empower their staff, that empower everyone that really comes their way and sees their value and worth despite what other people think. So yes, I think I'm very lucky, and I'm sure we can all agree that we all have been surrounded by really awesome mentors in our life. And I definitely want to open up this space right now before we end, because I know we only have about 11 minutes left, for any questions that the participants may have. So it's open up to you guys. You guys can unmute yourselves. You could drop it in the chat, whatever you're comfortable with. What questions do you have for Yesenia, Daniel, Robert, and myself? Yulia says, thank you for opening up. Thank you for attending.
Thank you, everybody, so much. I thank you for Nisha sharing. And I was just sharing this morning at the pods and how you came to us before we even learned about the fellowship and how this project came out of this. It's just such a great, great community. And thank you, pandemic, I guess, for giving us this opportunity to connect with each other remotely. I don't think this would have been possible, all right, in any other time or space. So this is beautiful. And I wanted to say, Daniel, I heard all the things that you were sharing today. As a principal, you were in school, I work with the youth workforce, and it's been a hard week for us. It's a really hard week. And so I had the exactly same conversation today with our staff about leadership and how we can identify leadership in our youth and recognize that and foster that, and, you know, and really ask people questions. Hey, like, how can you now influence other people, right? How can you take that power with you? Exactly. When you said that, like, I was having goosebumps. We just had this conversation a few hours ago. So it really resonated. And I invite you to come and meet our youth and share stories and just, you know, say hi and meet us. We're at 136 Bay Street. We're a youth workforce development program here in North Shore and Staten Island. So come visit, anybody, everybody. Let's invest in our youth. They are the future. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
And I see Amina shared in the chat. I personally relate to some of the stories told here. It is really great to see so many similarities and how each one of you overcame it, which is motivation for myself and others, for sure. Anybody else? Any questions? Any comments?
This is Linda, and I'm always going to come through, so no worries. You brought up kind of, Yulia, how emerging leaders even started, and that made me think back to kind of our conversations. And so this kind of baby came from Nisha and I kind of doing PCCLF and having these conversations and wanting to do this. And both her and I are kind of in that place where we're becoming leaders in multiple different areas. I'm not going to go into my story, but you can listen to advocacy session 3 and you'll learn all about me. And so my question for all of you, because I think you're so much further in your careers and then maybe Nisha and I, as we develop, would be kind of right now, what advice would you give someone that's becoming a leader and how they can continue growing, and what should they always ensure for themselves?
As an emerging leader, right, Linda?
Oh, that was good.
I will say that trusting your skill set, because man, oh man, is it hard, especially when you're in a place and space where maybe people have years and years of experience against you. You're here for a reason, and you're here because you belong to be here. You got to this place and space not by a snap of a finger, not because you wished, use your genie to wish it here. You got here because you deserve to be here, and you need to start believing it. And once you believe it, you begin to embrace it. And once you embrace it, you see the change that you want to make.
I would say to just be steadfast and be fearless and grounded in what you believe, your core beliefs. I had core beliefs before I started this. There's some things that I just believe in. I never let those things go. But what I learned I'm not afraid to let that change some things or enhance them or to have more information. Just don't be closed. But trust yourself and trust your core beliefs, and even if those things are turned around, it's okay too. It's okay to have different conversations with people that change your mind, but just trust yourself and believe in yourself and be fearless in your pursuit. It's just fearless is because it's hard being at the top, being the boss. It's lonely. It's a lonely place. My wife is actually a principal as well, so we get to bounce things off each other, but it's a lonely place. And you can't be afraid to step out on a limb if you know it's right. And that takes courage, and it just takes just being steadfast. But don't be afraid to have someone come in and augment the way you think, if that's going to make you better. Don't just be open. It's a lot. It's a journey. but just be ready for it. It's hard. It's not easy. That's why most people can't do it. It's tough to do. Like, it's tough to be all the time. I question myself a lot, but whenever I question myself and my actions, I always go back to what, if I did it for the betterment of the students that I serve, then it's a good thing. Maybe I didn't say it right, maybe I didn't do it right, but I know that my heart is pure with that, and I know I do that. Maybe I just don't yell so much sometimes. Just learning different ways to communicate, that's all. But just be ready for that. Like, just be ready to embrace it and change what you need to change, but stay true to yourself.
And I think as well, especially for the young woman, of color, I know how difficult it is when you are in certain spaces. I know how difficult it is when you are categorized either as too emotional or just people being condescending or undermining. I know how that feels, because even till this day, I still go through it. But I just want you to know that you're not alone in this process. I want you all to know that as time passes, it's not that this is going to go away. It's not, because as a young woman of color, you are breaking barriers, you're opening spaces. And as cliche as it sounds, that you are that you're leaving a better path for the next person, it's true, because thanks to those women that were ahead of me, those women of color, they opened those spaces for me. And that's how, I am where I am, because they open up that path. So just keep in mind that it's not that the things are going to get easier, right? Because you are breaking these barriers. What's going to happen is that you're going to get stronger. And when you get stronger, then you get more dangerous to those who are not liking you being in that space. But at the same time, you're opening up the space for other young women who are looking up to you. So when it does get difficult, just talk to somebody else. You'll be surprised how many other women are also in the same position that you are. But when you talk to one another, you're able to relate and you're able to bounce ideas. But I just would let you know that it doesn't get easier, you just get stronger, and you're going to continue breaking those barriers.
I think Daniel and Yesenia really nailed it. I think they're both great wisdom that they shared. And I think the only other thing I would add for me is, it sounded cliche, but even today in my life, whether you think you can or can't, you're right. Whether you think you can or can't, you're right. Like, your attitude, your confidence, your ability, the mental tapes, the mental models you have in your head when you start something, that I can't do this, well, that's what's going to happen. Or I can do this, well, then that's what's going to happen. Like, what you believe, you will bring to fruition. And even in my graduate program, and knowing that I can do this, or I would say, well, why not? Why can't I? As opposed to, I can't do this. Right. Listen to my grandmother tell me, she's like, you have no choice, go get it done. That necessity that Yesenia was talking about. Right. And but those mental models that we have and recognizing what those mental models are in our head that really inhibit us or support our success. But be mindful of what are those tapes in your head that are playing when you're going after your goals. Just be really cognizant and recognize what they are, and unpack them, because they will stick around in every aspect of your life, whether it's your partnership with your significant other or your husband, wife, partner, whether it's starting a new job, whether it's going back to school, whatever it is. Be mindful of those tapes in your head and work through them.
For sure. Thank you guys so much for all your wonderful answers. I really want to I want to pass it to Yvette really quickly so she can announce our winner for tonight and kind of do our closing for us.
Hold on one second. Let me just stop the recording.